Mafia boss secretly follows young black Maid home. Quadruplet son's discovery left him speechless. Now, he must protect the family he never knew he had before. Can he save them, or will his violent past tear them apart? The study gleamed in the late afternoon light that filtered through towering windows. Amara Johnson moved with practiced efficiency, her cleaning cloth sweeping across the rich mahogany desk that dominated the room. 5 years of working in Dante Moretti's mansion had taught her to be invisible, to blend into the shadows of luxury that surrounded her. Her heart skipped when heavy footsteps approached. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. His presence filled any room he entered, commanding attention without saying a word. The door opened, and Dante Moretti's expensive Italian leather shoes crossed the threshold. Amara kept her head down, focusing on the circular motions of her cleaning. The scent of his cologne, rich and dangerous, filled the air around her. She could feel his eyes on her, that piercing gray gaze that haunted her dreams and nightmares alike. "Leave it!" His deep voice cut through the silence. Amara's hand stilled on the desk. "Yes, sir." She gathered her cleaning supplies quickly, careful to keep her eyes lowered. As she moved toward the door, his large frame blocked her path. "Look at me." The command froze her in place. Slowly, reluctantly, she lifted her gaze to meet his. Those eyes, the same ones she saw every morning in 4 identical little faces, studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You seem distracted today," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "No, sir, I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Before he could respond, the study door burst open again. Marco, Dante's underboss, rushed in with a tablet in his hand. His usually composed face was tight with concern. "Boss, we have a situation." Marco's eyes flickered to Amara. "Private." Dante didn't move from his position, blocking her path. "Wait outside," he told her, his tone brooking no argument. Amara slipped past him, careful not to brush against his suit. As she closed the door behind her, she caught snippets of their conversation. Shipment details leaked. Inside job. Someone in the household. Her hands trembled as she pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway. The weight of her secret pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She needed to get home, needed to hold her boys close and make sure they were safe. In his study, Dante stood at the window, watching as Amara's small figure hurried across the courtyard toward the staff exit. Something about her had been off today. The way she avoided his gaze more than usual, the slight shake in her hands, the tension in her shoulders. "Show me the security footage," he ordered Marco. Hours later, in the dim light of his surveillance room, Dante reviewed the day's recordings. He watched Amara leave early, her usual graceful movements betraying an urgency he'd never seen before. His fingers tapped against the arm of his leather chair as he rewound and replayed the footage. 5 years she'd worked in his house. 5 years of quiet efficiency and lowered eyes. He'd noticed her from the beginning, how could he not? There was something about her that pulled at him, something that made him want to grab her chin and force her to meet his gaze fully. But today was different. Today, she'd practically radiated anxiety. Dante leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied her image on the screen. Tomorrow, he decided, he would follow her. Tomorrow, he would discover what she was hiding. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that his world was about to shatter. And it would start with the secret Amara Johnson had been protecting for 5 long years. The orange glow of sunset painted Milan's streets. Amara slipped out of the mansion's service entrance. Her shoulders relaxed slightly once she cleared the iron gates, but the tension never fully left her body. It never did. From behind the tinted windows of his Mercedes, Dante watched her slight figure move with practiced efficiency toward the tram stop. Something about her deliberate movements, the way she kept her head down, made his jaw clench. He'd seen thousands of people try to hide things from him. He knew guilt when he saw it. His driver kept a careful distance as they followed the tram through progressively rougher neighborhoods. The sleek car drew attention here, where paint peeled from building facades and graffiti marked territorial lines between local gangs. Dante's fingers drummed against his thigh. This wasn't the kind of place someone with clean hands lived. When Amara finally stepped off the tram, Dante ordered his driver to park in the shadows of an abandoned storefront. He watched her quick steps down the cracked sidewalk, noting how her eyes darted around, always aware, always cautious, like prey. She slipped into the weathered apartment building without a backward glance, her silhouette swallowed by the cracked doorway and flickering hallway light. Dante remained outside, parked beneath the shadow of a dying street lamp, his pulse thrumming with a primal urgency. Something was off. His instincts, honed by years of blood, betrayal, and survival, screamed that he was on the verge of uncovering something monumental, something that would change everything. 5 minutes passed like hours. Then, a soft glow bloomed from a third-floor window, casting golden light onto the peeling brick facade. Moments later, the unmistakable sound of children's laughter floated down, light and unguarded, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Dante's breath caught. He stepped forward, his body melting into the shadows between pools of streetlight. Every movement calculated, silent. He reached the edge of the Prabrigo building and tilted his head, peering through the sheer curtains that fluttered gently in the open window. What he saw made his heart seize. 4 small boys, no older than 5, tumbled around Amara's legs, their giggles echoing through the room. They clung to her skirt, climbed onto the couch, chased each other in circles. But it wasn't their playfulness that shattered Dante's composure. It was their faces. 4 identical faces. Olive-toned skin, dark tousled hair, and their eyes, those unmistakable storm gray eyes, the signature of the Moretti bloodline. Eyes he saw every morning, in his own reflection. His knees buckled, and he gripped the edge of the building to steady himself. The world tilted, the pavement beneath him seeming to shift like sand. A memory slammed into him with brutal clarity. That night, 5 years ago at his cousin's estate. The party. The maid with the quiet smile and haunted eyes. The one who vanished without a trace the next morning. "What the F times, Kay?" he whispered, stumbling backward. His hands trembled as he reached for the car door, a sensation he hadn't felt since his first kill at 14. Inside the Mercedes, he collapsed into the leather seat, pressing his forehead against the cool surface, trying to anchor himself. Those boys weren't just strangers. They were his sons, his blood, his legacy. And Amara had hidden them from him. His jaw clenched, and his fingers curled into fists, the leather creaking beneath his grip. Rage surged through him, hot and possessive, mingled with betrayal so sharp it felt like a blade to the gut. Amara Johnson had just made the gravest mistake of her life. "Drive," he growled to his driver, voice low and lethal. He needed time. Time to think, to plan, because tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow he would reclaim what was his. The sharp click of Amara's heels echoed through the marble foyer of the Moretti mansion, each step a drumbeat of dread. Her heart pounded as she rounded the corner and saw him, Dante, standing at the base of the grand staircase, like a statue carved from fury. His tailored suit did nothing to soften the menace in his posture. His face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with a fire that made her blood run cold. "Leave us," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. He didn't look at the staff, didn't need to. The maids and security guards scattered instantly, their footsteps fading into silence. The heavy door clicked shut behind her. Then came another sound, the metallic snap of a lock engaging. Amara's throat tightened. Dante took 3 slow, deliberate steps toward her, his movements predatory, like a panther stalking prey. "You've been keeping secrets, Amara." His voice was soft, almost tender, but laced with danger, like silk wrapped around a blade. She clutched her purse tighter, her knuckles white. "Mr. Moretti, I—" "4 boys," he interrupted, his tone darkening. "4 beautiful boys, with my eyes." Her breath caught. The room seemed to spin. How had he found out? When had he followed her? Then the realization hit her like a freight train. He must have seen them. He'd followed her home. Her stomach dropped, and terror clawed its way up her spine. "How long did you think you could hide them from me?" he asked, stepping closer, his presence overwhelming. "My own flesh and blood? Please," she whispered, backing away until her spine met the cold wall. "They're innocent. They don't know anything about this world." He laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow sound. "And whose fault is that?" His palms slammed against the wall beside her head, making her flinch. 5 years, Amara. 5 years you kept my children from me." "It was one night," she said, her voice trembling. "That party at your cousin's estate. I didn't know who you were until I found out I was pregnant and started asking questions." She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "When I learned you were a Moretti, you ran." His voice was venomous. "I had to protect them." Her words burst out, raw and desperate. "I grew up watching the news, seeing what happened to families like yours. The violence, the revenge killings, the children caught in the crossfire. I couldn't—" her voice cracked. "I couldn't let my babies grow up in that world." For a moment, something flickered in Dante's eyes. Pain, rage, maybe even regret. His fists clenched at his sides, knuckles white, veins bulging. "You had no right," he growled. "They are my sons, my blood." His next words came out as a harsh whisper, each syllable laced with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Tears spilled down Amara's cheeks, her body trembling. "I did what any mother would do," she said, voice breaking. "I protected them the only way I knew how." Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. The chandelier above cast fractured light across the marble floor, illuminating 2 people bound by a single night and torn apart by 5 years of secrets. And somewhere upstairs, 4 little boys slept soundly, unaware that the world they knew was about to be shattered. Dante stepped back abruptly, as if her tears burned him. The muscle in his jaw ticked as he stared at her, his expression a storm of emotions she couldn't read. Without another word, he turned and stormed toward his office, his footsteps echoing like thunder. The door slammed with enough force to rattle the crystal chandelier above. Amara slid down the wall, her legs giving out as 5 years of carefully guarded secrets crumbled around her. In the oppressive silence of the foyer, one thought screamed through her mind. What had she done? Her little boys, her precious secrets, were now known to one of the most dangerous men in Milan, and he was their father. Amara's hands shook as she finished tucking the boys into bed. The knock at her door wasn't unexpected. She'd been waiting for it since this morning's confrontation. Still, her heart stopped when she opened it, to find Dante Moretti filling her narrow doorway, his massive frame blocking out the hallway light. He didn't wait for an invitation. His expensive Italian leather shoes crossed her worn threshold, his critical gaze taking in every detail of her small apartment. The boys' artwork plastered the walls, 4 identical sets of crayon drawings, 4 pairs of scuffed sneakers lined up by the door, 4 backpacks hung on hooks that were barely within their reach. "Pack what you need," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You're coming with me tonight." Amara's spine stiffened. "No." His jaw ticked. "This isn't a request." "They're sleeping," she whispered fiercely, gesturing toward the bedroom. "I'm not waking them up to..." "To what? To move them somewhere safe? Somewhere they'll have everything they deserve?" His eyes blazed. "Everything I would have given them? If you hadn't hidden them from me?" Shame and defiance warred in her chest. "They have everything they need right here." Dante's laugh was cold. "In this neighborhood? With no security? No protection?" He stalked closer, and Amara forced herself not to step back. "You kept my sons from me for 5 years. That makes you either very brave or very foolish. I kept them safe." "Safe?" He spat the word. "You don't know what safe is." The crack of gunfire split the night. Glass shattered. Dante's body slammed into hers, taking them both to the floor as another shot rang out. Someone shouted outside one of his men. More gunfire followed. "Boys!" Amara screamed, trying to scramble up, but Dante's weight pinned her. "Stay down!" he growled, covering her with his body. His hand pressed her head to his chest, and she could feel his heart thundering against her cheek. Footsteps pounded down the hall, the heavy tread of his security team. "Area secured, boss," a voice called. "One shooter." He got away, but Marco took a hit. Dante's breath was hot against her ear. "You see now?" His words carried the weight of victory and fury. "They're already watching. They know about our sons." His fingers dug into her arms as he pulled back to look at her. "You're mine now, Amara. They made the choice for you." From the bedroom, a small voice called out, "Mama?" Amara closed her eyes, tears slipping free. In one night, her careful world had shattered. She'd spent 5 years running from this man's world. And now, it had found them anyway. "Pack their things," Dante said, helping her up. His touch was gentler now, but no less possessive. "You have 10 minutes before we leave." She looked at the bullet hole in her window, at the glass scattered across her floor like diamonds. Then she thought of her boys, sleeping peacefully in the next room, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. She had no choice. Not anymore. The mansion buzzed with nervous energy as maids scurried through the halls, their arms laden with fresh linens and toys. Dante stood in the center of what would be the boys' playroom, his imposing figure a stark contrast to the cheerful space taking shape around him. "Higher," he commanded, as 2 men positioned a massive flat-screen TV on the wall. His eyes swept the room critically. "The security cameras?" "Hidden but operational, boss," his head of security confirmed. Down the hall, Amara's hands trembled as she unpacked the boys' meager belongings. Their whole life fit into 3 duffel bags. The contrast between their worn clothes and the mansion's opulence made her stomach turn. "Mama, look!" Lorenzo, always the most adventurous of her sons, pressed his face against a window overlooking the garden. "There's a pool." "Don't get too excited," she muttered, but it was too late. All 4 boys crowded the window, their identical gray eyes wide with wonder. "Can we swim?" Marco asked. "Please?" Leo and Nico chimed in together. Before Amara could answer, a deep voice came from the doorway. "Of course you can." Dante filled the entrance, his presence commanding immediate attention. The boys fell silent, instinctively moving closer to their mother. But Dante's eyes, usually cold and calculating, held something different when he looked at them, something almost soft. "After you've settled in," he added, his tone gentler than Amara had ever heard it. She watched in disbelief as her sons' faces lit up. They didn't know this man was dangerous. They didn't know he had blood on his hands. Throughout the day, She noticed how Dante's men reacted to the children. Even the most hardened soldiers couldn't help but smile when the quadruplets raced past, their laughter echoing through halls that had known only silence and fear. But night came too quickly. After tucking the boys into their new beds, each in a room fit for a prince, Amara retreated to her assigned chamber. The click of the lock behind her made her flinch. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers twisting in the silk sheets that probably cost more than a month's rent at her apartment. The lock turned again. Dante entered, and her breath caught. In his hands was a worn photograph, one she'd kept hidden in her bedside drawer. 4 tiny babies, just hours old, wrapped in hospital blankets. Why? His voice cracked on the word, surprising them both. Why didn't you tell me? Amara. She looked up at him, at the pain etched across his beautiful, dangerous face. Because I saw what you were capable of, she whispered. I saw you kill a man the week before I found out I was pregnant. You shot him in the parking lot of that club, and you didn't even blink. His fingers tightened on the photo. You thought I would hurt them. I thought you would turn them into you. The silence that followed was deafening. Dante moved closer, until he stood directly in front of her. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. They're my sons, my blood. I would have protected you, all of you. Protected us? Amara laughed bitterly. Like you're protecting us now? By locking us in? His jaw clenched. You gave me no choice. There's always a choice, Dante. You just like taking them away from everyone else. He knelt before her suddenly, bringing them eye to eye. The photograph trembled in his grip. 5 years, he breathed. 5 years of their lives I can never get back. Did they even know I existed? Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes. They knew they had a father who couldn't be with them. That's all they needed to know. That's not enough anymore. His voice hardened with resolve. They're Morettis. And you, Amara, you've always been mine. You just didn't know it yet. The morning sun filtered through the ornate dining room windows, casting long shadows across the massive mahogany table. Amara's stomach twisted as she watched her 4 boys, Alessandro, Marco, Lucas, and Gabriel fidget in chairs that seemed to swallow their small frames. Dante sat at the head of the table like a statue carved from marble, his presence filling the room with an intensity that made the staff move with extra caution. The only sounds were the quiet clink of silver against fine china and the boys' whispered conversations. Sir? Alessandro, always the bravest, addressed Dante. Could you pass the syrup? Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Pain. Perhaps at being called Sir by his own son. He wordlessly passed the crystal container. The tension snapped when Marco's elbow caught his glass, sending orange juice spreading across the pristine tablecloth. The staff froze. Amara's heart stopped, memories of harsh punishments in other homes flashing through her mind. But Dante simply reached for a crisp white napkin and handed it to Marco. It happens, he said, his voice softer than Amara had ever heard it. Marco took the napkin with wide eyes. Thank you, sir. Amara watched Dante's jaw clench at the sil dentes, not com syllabrabris die, and a drouse, in com syllabravans. Title again, but he only nodded and returned to his coffee. Later, she found him in his study, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the boys were playing in the protected courtyard, their laughter carrying through the glass. Their dark heads bobbed as they chased each other, mirror images of their father's coloring. Dante's hands hung at his sides, his fingers twitching slightly as he watched them. The fearsome Don Moretti, who could order death with a single nod, looked almost lost as he observed his sons from afar. He must have sensed her presence because he turned, catching her gaze. The coldness that usually dominated his features had softened into something unfamiliar, something that made Amara's chest tighten. "They're happy here," he said quietly. Not quite a question. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, unsure how to handle this version of him. They're adaptable. Children usually are. His eyes darkened with understanding of what she left unsaid. That she wasn't as adaptable. That this gilded cage was still a cage. But when he looked back at the boys, that same softness returned, and Amara felt her certainties shifting like sand beneath her feet. This man, who had terrorized her with his power and control, now stood watching his children with such naked longing that it made her throat tight. She turned away before he could see her confusion. She wasn't ready to acknowledge what that softness might mean for any of them. Amara's heart hammered as she led the boys through the shadowy garden paths. 5 years of protecting them had taught her to move silently, to find escape routes wherever she went. The mansion's back gate was just ahead, barely visible in the darkness. "Quiet now," she whispered, squeezing Marco's small hand. The other 3 boys huddled close, their matching gray eyes wide with fear. Those eyes, his eyes, haunted her every time she looked at them. The gate's metal surface felt cool under her fingers. Just as she reached for the latch, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Johnson?" She froze. Franco, Dante's most trusted guard, stepped out from behind a hedge. More lights flickered on, and suddenly the garden blazed with security spotlights. An alarm pierced the quiet night. "Mama?" Luca whimpered, pressing against her leg. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Amara didn't need to turn around to know who it was, she felt. Dante's presence like electricity in the air. The boys grew still, sensing the tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was terrifyingly soft. "Take the children inside." Franco moved forward, but Amara pulled the boys closer. "No. Now." The single word held enough authority to make the guards step forward immediately. Dante knelt beside her, his expensive suit collecting dirt. His face was calm. Too calm. "You seem to misunderstand something fundamental, Kara." He reached out, brushing a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Every attempt like this will cost you. Next time, you'll be confined to a single room, alone." The threat of separation from her children hit harder than any physical blow. "You can't." A guard approached quickly, whispering something in Dante's ear. Amara watched as his expression transformed from controlled anger to something darker, more dangerous. "They know," he said, his voice hollow. The words seemed to drop like stones in the quiet garden. Amara felt cold spread through her chest. "Who knows what?" Dante's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw real fear there. "Everyone. About you. About them." He looked toward the house where their sons had been taken. The secret's out. The garden lights suddenly felt too bright, too exposed. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, understanding with horrible clarity. They weren't just running from Dante anymore. The entire underworld now knew about the Moretti heirs. "Get inside," Dante ordered, his hand firm but gentle on her lower back. "Now, we really can't let you leave." The night shattered with gunfire. Amara's heart stopped as rough hands grabbed her, shoving her and the boys through dark corridors. The children whimpered, clinging to her nightgown as Dante's men herded them down into the basement level of the mansion. "Get them in the panic room. Now." A guard barked. The heavy steel door closed behind them with a definitive clang. Inside, the room was a stark contrast to the mansion's luxury. Reinforced concrete walls, basic furniture, and harsh fluorescent lighting that made her boys' faces look pale and frightened. More gunshots crackled outside, closer this time. The 4 identical boys huddled against her, their small bodies trembling. She gathered them into her arms, pressing kisses to their dark heads. "Mama's here," she whispered, fighting to keep her voice steady. Everything's going to be okay. But it wasn't okay. This was exactly what she'd feared when she'd run 5 years ago. The violence, the danger, the constant threat of death. Now her worst nightmares were coming true, and her children were caught in the middle of it. Minutes stretched into hours. The gunfire eventually died down, replaced by shouts and the thunder of boots above them. When the panic room door finally opened, Dante stood there, his white shirt spattered with blood. His eyes found her immediately, huddled in the corner with their sons wrapped around her like a protective shield. Something in his face changed, the cold mask cracking to reveal raw anguish underneath. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and knelt before her. His hand, still warm from violence, came up to cup her tear-stained cheek. Those storm-gray eyes, the same ones their boys had inherited, bore into hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "No one will ever touch you," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I swear on my life." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and threat. Amara looked into the face of the monster she'd run from, the father of her children, and saw something she'd never expected: desperation. In that moment, she realized that Dante Moretti might be as trapped by his love for them as she was by his power over her. The late afternoon sun dipped low on the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the sprawling Moretti estate. The garden, meticulously maintained with trimmed hedges and blooming roses, glowed in hues of amber and gold. Amara sat quietly on a wrought iron bench beneath a weeping willow. Her fingers curled around the edge of the seat as she watched her boys tumble through the grass like wildflowers in the wind. Their laughter rang out pure, unfiltered joy. It pierced her heart with both warmth and dread. They were so innocent, so blissfully unaware of the world they'd been born into. A world of power and violence, of secrets and bloodlines. A world ruled by the man watching them from above. Dante stood on the balcony like a sentinel, his silhouette framed by the ornate stone balustrade. His hands gripped the railing, knuckles pale against the dark fabric of his tailored suit. The late sun caught the edge of his jaw, casting sharp shadows across his face. Below him, armed guards moved in quiet formation, their rifles slung across their chests, a constant reminder that safety here came at a cost. Marcus, the boldest of the 4, broke from the pack and waved up at the balcony. "Look how high I can jump, sir," he called, his voice bright and proud. Dante's expression shifted, barely perceptible, but Amara saw it. A flicker of softness, a crack in the armor. It vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar mask of control. Their eyes met across the garden, and Amara's breath caught. There was something in his gaze she hadn't seen before. Not tenderness, not exactly, but something quieter, something dangerous in its vulnerability. He'd changed since the attack. The night the estate had been breached, when bullets shattered windows and blood-stained marble. He'd been colder since then, more calculating. But beneath the steel, there was a new edge, an intensity that felt less like fury and more like obsession. The moment fractured when one of Dante's men approached him on the balcony, leaning in to whisper something urgent. Dante's jaw clenched, and he barked a command in clipped Italian before turning and disappearing into the mansion. Amara's stomach twisted. That evening, the house was quiet. The boys had been bathed, fed, and tucked into bed. She moved from one small bed to the next, brushing curls from foreheads, pressing soft kisses to warm skin. "Sweet dreams, my loves," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She lingered at the door, watching them breathe in unison, their chests rising and falling like waves. She had just closed the door when she felt that shift in the air, the unmistakable presence behind her. Turning slowly, She found Dante standing in the doorway to her room. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence filled the space, made the walls feel closer, the ceiling lower. He stepped inside, his movements deliberate, and crossed to her dresser. From the inner pocket of his jacket, he withdrew a small black velvet box and placed it on the polished wood surface. Amara stared at it, her hands trembling as she reached for the lid. Inside lay a necklace exquisite and ominous. A black diamond pendant, cut to perfection, suspended from a delicate platinum chain. It shimmered in the dim light like a drop of midnight. Her breath hitched. "You belong to me now," Dante said, his voice low, possessive. The words weren't a question. They weren't even a declaration. They were law. His storm-gray eyes locked onto hers, the same eyes she saw in her sons every day. "You and the boys," he continued. "You're mine to protect." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Before she could speak, he turned and walked away, leaving behind the echo of his promise and the glittering weight of the diamond. Amara stood frozen, staring at the necklace. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, and she understood. This wasn't a gift. It was a collar, a claim, a warning, a vow. A single tear slid down her cheek, tracing the edge of her jaw. Dante Moretti hadn't just found her. He hadn't just found his sons. He had bound her to him in blood, in silence, in shadow. And there was no going back. The morning sun streamed through the mansion's tall windows, casting long shadows across the dining room's marble floors. Amara paused in the doorway, taken aback by the spread before her. Fresh pastries, still warm from the oven, sat alongside bowls of colorful fruit and plates of eggs prepared 4 different ways. Her boys rushed past her, their excited chatter filling the usually silent room. "Pancakes!" Leo, the youngest by 2 minutes, squealed. Dante stood at the head of the table, his usual dark suit replaced by a casual black sweater that did nothing to diminish his dangerous aura. His eyes followed the children's movements with an intensity that made Amara's chest tighten. "I wasn't sure what they liked," he said quietly as she took her seat. "So I had the chef prepare everything." Amara watched as he helped Marco cut his pancakes, his large hands surprisingly gentle with the knife. The sight confused her. This man who could order deaths with a single nod, carefully ensuring her son wouldn't hurt himself. "Thank you, sir," Marco said shyly. Something flickered across Dante's face. You can call me something else if you want." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Amara looked down at her plate, her appetite gone. This wasn't the monster she'd run from 5 years ago. This was something far more dangerous. A man trying to be better. Later, as the autumn breeze rustled through the garden's cypress trees, Amara found herself walking beside Dante. The bronze children played ahead, their security detail maintaining a respectful distance. "I was 7 when I saw my first murder," Dante said suddenly, his voice low. "My father made me watch, said it would make me strong." He stopped walking, his gray eyes fixed on the horizon. "I was raised to destroy anything that showed weakness, to take what I wanted without mercy." Amara's heart pounded. She'd never heard him speak like this, raw and unguarded. "But you!" He turned to her, and for the first time, she saw past his walls, saw the broken pieces he'd hidden for so long. "You've made me want something else, something I don't know how to have." The vulnerability in his voice made her breath catch. This wasn't the calculated move of a mafia boss. This was a man drowning in his own darkness, reaching for light. "What do you want?" she whispered, though part of her feared the answer. His eyes met hers, filled with an emotion she couldn't name. A chance to be more than what they made me. The wall between them cracked. letting in a dangerous ray of understanding. Amara felt it in her bones. This moment would change everything. The library was cloaked in a hush, so profound it felt sacred. The scent of aged paper and polished mahogany lingered in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of roses drifting in from the garden beyond the arched windows. Amara moved slowly through the rows of towering shelves, her fingertips grazing the spines of leather-bound volumes some centuries old, others pristine and untouched. She wasn't reading. Not really. She was hiding, escaping, seeking refuge in the one place Dante rarely entered. Here, surrounded by knowledge and silence, she could almost forget the gilded cage she now lived in. Almost. The door behind her clicked shut with a soft finality. Her breath caught. The sound was unmistakable, deliberate, controlled. Her spine stiffened as the familiar scent of Dante's cologne filled the room. It was a signature blend. Warm, spice layered over something darker, more dangerous. It clung to the air like a warning. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. Every nerve in her body was already aware of him, reacting to his presence like a flame to oxygen. Her heart thudded against her ribs, a primal rhythm of anticipation and dread. "You can't keep avoiding me, Tesoro," Dante said. His voice low and smooth like silk stretched over a blade. Amara's fingers tightened around the book she'd pulled from the shelf, her knuckles pale. "I'm not avoiding you," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I'm reading." He moved closer, his footsteps silent on the thick Persian carpet. She felt the heat of him before she saw him, the air between them charged with tension. He didn't touch her, but his presence was overwhelming, magnetic. "5 years," he murmured, his breath brushing her ear. "5 years you kept them from me. Did you think I wouldn't want what's mine?" She turned then, slowly, deliberately. Her chin lifted in defiance. "They're not property, Dante. And neither am I." His storm-gray eyes darkened, flicking down to her lips. The intensity in his gaze made her pulse stutter. "You know I can take you whenever I want." The words should have chilled her, should have sent her running. But instead, they ignited something dangerous inside her, a forbidden thrill that curled low in her belly. "Is that what you do?" she asked, voice low. "Take whatever you want?" "Yes." He stepped closer, the space between them vanishing. "But you already know that." Her back met the bookshelf, the hard wood pressing into her spine. His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted the storm in his eyes. "Dante," she began, but the rest of her protest was swallowed by his mouth. The kiss was not gentle. It was a claim, a punishment, a release of everything he'd held back. His lips crushed hers, demanding submission, and she gave it with a soft moan that escaped before she could stop it. His tongue swept past her lips, tasting, taking, and something inside her shattered. His hands gripped her hips, lifting her effortlessly against the shelves. Books tumbled around them, forgotten. Her body betrayed her, arching into him, craving the heat of his touch, even as her mind screamed that this was wrong, that she shouldn't want this, that she shouldn't want him. But she did. The kiss deepened, grew darker, more desperate. His fingers tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, anchoring her to him as if he feared she might vanish again. Her hands found his shoulders, then his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath the expensive fabric. It matched her own, wild, erratic, unmoored. When he finally pulled back, their breaths mingled in the charged silence. Her lips were swollen, her heart racing. His thumb brushed her bottom lip, lingering there with possessive reverence. "I won't apologize," he said, voice rough with emotion. "You belong to me now." Then he was gone, leaving her trembling against the bookshelf, the taste of him still on her lips and the echo of his claim ringing in her ears. The library's silence felt different now, no longer a refuge, but a witness to something irrevocable, something dangerous, something that had already begun to unravel her carefully guarded world. Amara sank slowly to the floor, her back against the shelf, the fallen books scattered around her like broken promises. Her fingers brushed her lips, still tingling from his kiss, and she closed her eyes. She had crossed a line. Or perhaps Dante had dragged her across it. Either way, there was no going back. The evening shadows lengthened across Dante's study as his phone buzzed. He answered it with one hand, the other absently touching the photo of his sons he now kept on his desk. His underboss's voice was tight with urgency. "Boss, we found something. The leak. It's coming from inside the mansion." Dante's fingers stilled on the photograph. The quiet that followed was deadly. "Explain." "Phone records, bank transfers, all traced back to someone with intimate access to your daily operations." Through the window, Dante caught sight of Amara in the garden with the boys. His jaw clenched. He'd brought them here to protect them, but he'd invited them into a nest of vipers. "Lock down all communications," he ordered. "I want every staff member's movements for the past month on my desk within the hour." As reports flooded in, one name kept surfacing. Bianca, his fiancée, the woman he'd agreed to marry to secure peace between families. The evidence was like acid in his veins. Encrypted messages, secret meetings, money trails leading straight to his rivals. He found her in the East Wing, dressed in silk and diamonds, his diamonds. She smiled when she saw him, but it died on her lips when she met his eyes. "Dante, don't." His voice was soft, dangerous. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" She tried to reach for him, but he caught her wrist in a grip that made her gasp. "It's not what you think." "No?" He released her with such force, she stumbled. "The transfers to offshore accounts? The messages to your father's men? Tell me, Kara, what exactly should I think?" Fear finally cracked through her perfect mask. "You were never going to marry me, were you? Not after that maid showed up with your bastards." Dante moved so fast Bianca flinched. "Those bastards are my blood. And you," his laugh was cold enough to freeze hell, "you've signed your own death warrant." He snapped his fingers, and two of his most trusted men appeared. "Get her out of my sight. Make sure she can't contact anyone." As they dragged her away, her screams echoing through the halls, Dante stood alone in the growing darkness. His world was shifting, alliances crumbling. But one truth remained. Amara and his sons were the only ones he could trust. From the garden below, he heard children's laughter. His children. His gaze found Amara again, watching as she gathered their sons for dinner. She looked up, somehow sensing his presence, and their eyes locked. In that moment, surrounded by betrayal, she was his only certainty. Amara felt his presence before she saw him. It was always like this now, Dante's energy filling every room she entered, suffocating her with its intensity. She kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching the setting sun paint the garden in shades of amber and gold. Their sons played below, their laughter, a stark contrast to the heaviness in her chest. "You've been avoiding me." His voice came from the doorway, quiet but laced with danger. She didn't turn around. "I'm trying to protect my children. Our children." The correction was swift, sharp. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor as he moved closer. "You're mine, whether you accept it or not." The possessiveness in his tone made her fingers curl into fists. Heat radiated from his body as he stopped behind her, close enough that she could feel his breath on her neck. "I see how you look at me when you think I'm not watching," he murmured. "The same way you looked at me that night 5 years ago." Amara spun around, her eyes blazing. That night was a mistake. A mistake that gave us 4 perfect sons. His gray eyes darkened. A mistake I intend to repeat. She backed away, her heart thundering in her chest. The wall hit her shoulders, and still she tried to put distance between them. Stop this. You can't just... Can't what? He stepped closer, caging her with his arms. Can't want what's mine? Something in her snapped. Amara shoved against his chest, breaking free of his hold. She stormed into the hallway, her voice echoing off the walls. I don't belong to you. Not like this. Not in this world. She made it 3 steps before his hand wrapped around her wrist, spinning her back into his chest. His grip was firm but careful, always careful with her, even in his anger. You've already made your choice, Amara. His voice dropped to a low growl that sent shivers down her spine. I'm not letting you go. She looked up at him, defiant even as tears threatened to fall. It wasn't a choice. You trapped me here. No, he said softly, his free hand coming up to cup her face. You trapped yourself the moment you kept my children from me. Now, we're both paying the price. The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She had made this bed the day she ran, and now they were both lying in it, tangled in a web of consequences neither of them could escape. His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Fight me all you want, Kara, but remember this, everything I do to protect what's mine. He released her then, stepping back with that predatory grace that marked his every movement. But his eyes never left her face. And in them, she saw the promise of things to come, passion and possession, danger and desire. And despite everything in her that screamed to run, some treacherous part of her wanted to stay. The mansion's walls seemed to close in with each passing day. Amara stood at her bedroom window, watching her sons play in the garden below. 4 identical faces lit up with laughter as they chased each other, guarded by men she knew carried weapons beneath their tailored suits. Lucas, the oldest by 2 minutes, stopped suddenly and pointed toward the house. Look! It's him again! Amara's heart clenched as Dante emerged onto the terrace. The boys had started noticing him more, asking questions she couldn't answer. How could she explain that the dangerous man watching them was their father? Why does he look at us like that? Marco, the youngest, asked his brothers. Because he's scary, Alex whispered. Like the monsters in our stories. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, fighting back tears. This was exactly what she'd tried to prevent by running all those years ago. A knock at her door made her jump. Get dressed. Dante's deep voice brooked no argument. He stood in her doorway, holding a garment bag. We're attending Giuseppe Russo's dinner party tonight. I can't leave the boys. They'll be safe here. His gray eyes, so like their son's, fixed on her. This isn't a request, Amara. 2 hours later, she sat beside him in his Mercedes, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than her old apartment's yearly rent. The silk clung to her curves in a way that made Dante's gaze burn every time he looked at her. The party was a nightmare, dressed in crystal and champagne. From the moment Amara stepped into the grand ballroom of Giuseppe Russo's estate, she felt the weight of eyes on her, curious, calculating, hungry. The room glittered with opulence, chandeliers dripping with diamonds, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, and walls adorned with gilded mirrors that reflected every movement, every glance. The air was thick with perfume, cigar smoke, and the quiet hum of power. It was a gathering of the elite, but beneath the surface shimmered something darker, an undercurrent of danger that made her skin crawl. She wore a gown of deep sapphire silk, the fabric hugging her curves and trailing behind her like moonlight on water. Dante had chosen it himself, along with the black diamond necklace that now rested against her collarbone like a brand. His hand never left her lower back, a constant touch that was both protective and possessive. It was a silent message to the room. She was his. But the message didn't stop the stares. Men in tailored suits watched her with predatory interest, their gazes lingering too long, their smiles too sharp. Their wives, draped in couture and diamonds, whispered behind manicured hands, dissecting her presence with cold precision. Amara felt like a rare animal in a gilded bee's cage, admired, envied, and utterly trapped. "So this is the woman who captured Moretti's attention," came a voice behind them, thick with accent and amusement. Giuseppe Russo, their host, approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His suit was impeccable, his charm rehearsed, but there was something oily beneath the surface, something that made Amara's stomach twist. He held a glass of champagne in one hand, the other tucked casually into his pocket, as if he owned the room and everyone in it. Dante's grip on her back tightened, subtle, but unmistakable. "She's off limits, Giuseppe." Russo raised his hands in mock surrender, but his gaze lingered on Amara with a hunger that made her pulse spike. Of course," he said smoothly. "But such beauty should be appreciated, no?" In one fluid motion, Dante stepped between them, his body a wall of tailored fury. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper, low enough that only Russo could hear. "Appreciate from a distance, or don't appreciate at all." The tension crackled like static. Russo's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he chuckled and turned away, retreating into the crowd with a murmured toast and a flash of teeth. Amara exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. She glanced up at Dante, whose jaw was clenched tight, eyes scanning the room like a predator assessing threats. He didn't speak, but his hand remained on her back, firmer now, as if to remind her and everyone else who she belonged to. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of polite smiles and veiled hostility. Amara barely touched her champagne. She danced once, briefly, with Dante, his hand gripping hers too tightly, his eyes never leaving the crowd. Every moment felt like a performance, every glance a test. She felt like she was walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. At one point, a woman in a blood-red gown leaned in close and whispered, "Careful, darling. Men like Dante don't fall. In love, they conquer." Amara didn't respond. She couldn't, because part of her feared the woman was right. By the time they slipped into the car, the night had turned cold. The silence between them was thick, heavy, with everything unspoken. Dante drove himself, a rare choice, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as the city lights flickered past. Amara watched him from the passenger seat, the hard line of his jaw, the storm brewing behind his eyes. She knew that look. It was the same one he wore before a deal went south, before someone disappeared. His silence wasn't passive, it was dangerous. They reached the mansion's gates, and Dante slowed the car, his grip still iron on the wheel. The guards nodded and waved them through, the wrought iron gates swinging open like jaws. Inside the estate, the silence followed them. Dante didn't speak, he didn't look at her. But Amara could feel the fury simmering beneath his skin, the possessiveness that had flared so violently at the party. She wondered if he was angry at Russo, or at her, or at the world that refused to let him love without turning it into war. She stepped out of the car and walked ahead, her heels clicking against the stone path. The mansion loomed before her, its windows glowing like watchful eyes. She felt the weight of the necklace against her skin, the cold metal, a reminder of the man who had claimed her. And somewhere deep inside, she wondered if she would ever be free again. "That's your world?" Amara asked quietly. Men treating women like prizes to be claimed? He turned to her, his expression dark with barely contained violence. "You're not a prize, Amara. You're mine." His hand caught her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "I won't let anyone touch you, not while I breathe." The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver down her spine, whether from fear or something darker. She couldn't tell anymore. It lingered in the air long after he'd spoken, like smoke curling around. Her thoughts, impossible to escape. She walked slowly through the dimly lit hallway, the soft click of her heels echoing off marble and silence. The mansion was quiet now, the party's glittering chaos replaced by an eerie stillness that seemed to press in from all sides. Crystal sconces cast golden pools of light along the corridor, but they did little to warm the chill crawling beneath her skin. Her fingers brushed the velvet railing as she ascended the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The black diamond necklace Dante had given her earlier that week felt heavier tonight, as if it had absorbed the weight of his words, his gaze, his claim. She reached her bedroom door and paused, her hand hovering over the handle. Behind her, the hallway stretched empty, but she could still feel him. Dante. His presence lingered like a shadow stitched to her heels, always watching, always waiting. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The room was dark, save for the moonlight spilling through the sheer curtains. It painted silver streaks across the floor, across the edge of her bed, across the mirror, where her reflection stared back at her wide-eyed, uncertain, changed. She crossed to the vanity and sat down, her fingers trembling as she reached up to touch the necklace. It was beautiful, exquisite. But tonight, it felt like a collar, a symbol of ownership, a promise wrapped in platinum and silence. Her mind replayed the evening in fragments, the way Dante had stepped between her and Russo, the fury in his eyes, the tension in his grip. He hadn't just protected her, he'd claimed her. And the worst part was, part of her had wanted it. That realization made her stomach twist. She had spent 5 years building walls, shielding her sons from the world Dante ruled. She had run from him, hidden from him, fought to keep her life separate. But now, those walls were crumbling, not from violence, not from threats, but from something far more insidious: his presence, his touch, his voice. The lines between captor and protector were starting to blur. She had seen him kill a man with his bare hands. She had watched him order executions with the same calm he used to pour a glass of wine. And yet, she had also seen him kneel beside Marcus when he scraped his knee, had heard him whisper lullabies in Italian when the boys couldn't sleep. He was ruthless, he was tender, he was terrifying, he was theirs. And she was losing herself in the dangerous gray area between. Amara stood and crossed to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. Outside, the garden was bathed in moonlight, the roses swaying gently in the breeze. Somewhere beyond the hedges, armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Somewhere below, Dante was likely pacing, planning, watching. She closed her eyes. She didn't know who she was anymore. The woman who had run? Or the one who had stayed? She didn't know what she felt when he touched her: revulsion or longing. She didn't know if she was falling in love with her captor, or simply surrendering to the inevitable. But she did know one thing. She was no longer free. The burner phone Amara had hidden beneath her mattress buzzed at midnight. Her heart stopped when she saw the number. "Mom, baby, we need help." Her mother's voice trembled through the line. "They came asking questions about you and the boys. Men with guns, Amara. What have you gotten yourself into?" Ice filled Amara's veins. She gripped the phone until her knuckles went white. "Who came? What did they look like?" Italian suits, cold eyes. They said they knew about my grandchildren. Her mother's breath hitched. Are you in trouble? Are the boys safe? Amara's gaze darted to the security camera in the corner of her room. Even this conversation was probably being monitored. I can't explain right now. Just stay inside. I'll figure something out. After hanging up, she paced the luxurious prison of her bedroom. The rival family was closing in, using her loved ones as pawns. But when she opened her door to sneak out, one of Dante's men was already there. The boss wants to see you. She found Dante in his study, lounging in his leather chair like a predator at rest. His storm gray eyes, the same ones their sons had inherited, pierced through her. Your family is being watched, he said simply, by both sides. Amara's hands clenched into fists. They're innocent. They don't deserve to be dragged into this. Nothing about this is about deserving. Dante stood, his movements fluid and dangerous. You made your choice 5 years ago when you kept my sons from me. Now everyone pays the price. Please, she whispered, hating how weak she sounded. Let me at least warn them. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, each step echoing with intent. The air shifted around him, thickening with tension, and Amara instinctively backed away until her spine met the wall. Cold plaster pressed into her skin, anchoring her in place as Dante loomed before her, his presence swallowing the space between them. His cologne hit her first, rich, layered, and unmistakably him. It was a scent she'd come to associate with danger, with power, with the man who had turned her life upside down. Spice and smoke, threaded with something darker. It filled her lungs, curled around her thoughts, and made her pulse spike. You'll never see them again unless I say so, he said, voice low and lethal. Don't test me, Amara. Not this time. The words landed like a blow. Her breath caught, her chest tightening as the implications sank in. Her sons, her world. The only reason she'd survived the last 5 years, he was threatening the very thing she'd sacrificed everything to protect. And he meant it. Dante Moretti didn't bluff. He didn't make idle threats. He delivered. She stared at him, her eyes wide, her body frozen. The man before her was the same one who had once whispered her name, like a prayer in the dark. The same man who had held her with reverence after that night at the estate. But now, that tenderness was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. Possession. She was trapped. Not just in this room, not just in this mansion, but in a life she hadn't chosen. A life forged from a single night of passion and sealed by blood. She had run from him, hidden her children, built a world where Dante didn't exist. But he had found her. And now he was rewriting the rules. His finger rose to trace the line of her jaw, slow and deliberate. The touch was deceptively gentle, but it carried the weight of ownership. Her skin burned beneath it, not from warmth, but from the cold realization that there was no escape. Not anymore. You're mine, he murmured, his voice soft but edged with steel. And everything that's yours belongs to me now, too. A tear slipped down her cheek, silent and unbidden. Dante caught it with his thumb, his touch lingering just a moment too long. It was both a comfort and a threat, an intimacy laced with control. His eyes locked onto hers, storm gray and unyielding. And in that moment, Amara saw the truth. She had never been free. Not since that night. Not since the moment she'd felt his gaze on her across the ballroom, the moment his hands had claimed her in the dark. She had run. She had hidden. She had built a life in the shadows, hoping he would never find her. But he had. And now, her family would pay the price for her secrets. Her knees trembled, but she refused to fall. She stared back at him, defiant even in her fear. But inside, something was breaking, splintering under the pressure of his dominance. His obsession, his love twisted into possession. He leaned closer, his breath brushing her cheek. "You should have known, Amara. I always get what's mine." Then he turned and walked away, leaving her pressed against the wall, shaking, shattered, and utterly claimed. The silence that followed was deafening. She slid down the wall, her gown pooling around her like spilled ink. Her fingers curled into fists, nails digging into her palms. She had fought so hard to protect her children, to keep them safe, to keep herself sane. But Dante had rewritten the rules, and now she was playing a game she could never win. She sat there for what felt like hours, the moonlight creeping across the floor, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her. Her thoughts spiraled memories of that night, of the months that followed, of the fear that had driven her into hiding. She remembered the first time she saw her son's eyes, those storm-gray eyes that mirrored his. She had known then that her past would never stay buried. She had tried to be strong, to be smart, to be invisible. But Dante Moretti didn't lose what was his. And now, she was his. Not just in name, not just in body, but in every way that mattered. Amara's heart stopped as screams erupted from the garden where her boys had been playing just moments before. She ran toward the French doors, but Dante's iron grip caught her waist, yanking her back against his chest. "Stay here," he growled, his voice deadly calm. His men were already moving, weapons drawn. "My children!" She fought against his hold, panic clawing at her throat. "Are being brought inside." His breath was hot against her ear. "Trust me for once, Amara." Through the window, she watched his security team surround her sons, shielding them with their bodies as they rushed them toward the house. Relief flooded her veins when she saw all four of them, scared but unharmed. The next few minutes passed in a blur of violence. Dante's men engaged the intruders, and the pristine garden became a battlefield. But it was Dante himself who made her blood run cold. The moment their boys were safe, he transformed. Gone was any trace of the man who'd shown glimpses of tenderness. In his place stood the monster everyone feared, the ruthless capo who'd earned his bloody reputation. He moved like a predator, efficient and merciless. 3 men fell to his gun before they could even raise their weapons. A 4th got close enough to fight, but Dante's hand snapped his neck with mechanical precision. When it was over, he stood among the bodies, his expensive suit splattered with red. His eyes, when they met hers through the window, were Arctic gray, empty of everything except rage. Later, after the children were asleep under heavy guard, Amara confronted him in his study. "Let us go," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "This world, it's too dangerous." "They're just children, Dante." He turned to her slowly, still wearing the blood-stained suit. "You think leaving would make them safer?" His laugh was hollow. "They're my sons, Amara, my blood. The target on their backs exists, whether you're here or not." "Please," she whispered. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides, caging her against the wall. His hands planted on either side of her head, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of an immovable force. "No one touches what's mine." His eyes burned into hers. "You're in my world now, and you'll stay there. For your safety, for theirs." Amara felt the last hope of escape crumble as she stared up at him. The man who'd killed without hesitation to protect their children, the same man who now held her captive with equal conviction. "I hate you," she breathed. His lips curved into a bitter smile. "Hate me all you want, Kara." His fingers traced her jaw, gentle, despite the blood still staining them. "But you're mine, to protect now, and I protect what's mine. The mansion felt different that evening. Quieter, colder. Amara sat in the playroom with the boys, watching them build towers with their wooden blocks, but her attention kept drifting to the shadows beyond the door. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air, thick and heavy like the calm before a storm. Dante stood in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. He hadn't moved in 10 minutes, just watching their sons with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His jaw was tight, his storm-gray eyes distant, lost in thoughts she knew were darker than usual. "Higher, Mama!" one of the boys called out, adding another block to their wobbly creation. She forced a smile, but her eyes kept returning to Dante. His fingers drummed against his thigh. A tell she'd learned meant he was planning something violent. "Sir?" Marco, one of his most trusted men, appeared behind him. They exchanged whispers, and Dante's expression hardened into something lethal. The tower of blocks crashed down, making Amara jump. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot, and she instinctively pulled the boys closer. Hours later, after she'd tucked the children into bed, she paced in her room. The mansion was too quiet, the kind of silence that screamed of danger. Her door opened without warning. Dante filled the frame, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. The moonlight caught his face, highlighting the cruel set of his mouth, the predatory gleam in his eyes. "They're coming for us," he said, his voice low and deadly. "The Rossi family. They've made their move." Amara's heart stopped. "The boys are the target." His fists clenched at his sides. "They think taking our sons will break me." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, backing her against the wall. "I won't let them take what's mine." His hand came up to cup her face, surprisingly gentle despite the violence brewing beneath his skin. "Pack a bag. Keep it ready." His thumb traced her bottom lip. "They want everything we have, but they don't understand." His eyes darkened with possession. "I'll burn this city to the ground before I let anyone take you from me." The promise in his voice sent shivers down her spine. This was the monster everyone feared, the man who'd built his empire on blood and bones. But as he looked at her, she saw something else too: desperation, fear, love. He was going to war for them, and God help anyone who stood in his way. The morning sun cast long shadows through Dante's study as he stood at the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. The phone call that had woken him still echoed in his mind, each word like a knife to his chest. "Boss," his underboss had said, voice trembling. "It's Giovanni. He's been feeding information to the Rossi family for months. And sir, he's taken them, Amara and 2 of the boys." Dante's fingers tightened around the crystal tumbler in his hand until it shattered, shards of glass cutting into his palm. He didn't feel the pain. All he felt was ice-cold rage coursing through his veins. The door opened behind him. Giovanni walked in, his usual smooth confidence still firmly in place. For a moment, Dante just looked at him. This man he'd trusted, who he'd considered family. "You look troubled, old friend," Giovanni said, his lips curving into a small smile. Dante moved like a predator, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He slammed Giovanni against the wall, forearm pressed against his throat. Blood from his cut hand smeared across Giovanni's expensive suit. "Where are they?" Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Giovanni wheezed out a laugh. "Where you'll never find them, the Rossi send their regards." "You touched my children," Dante pressed harder. "My woman. Someone had to show you weakness comes with a price." Giovanni's eyes gleamed with malice. "You've gone soft, Dante, all because of that maid and her brats." The gunshot echoed through the study before Giovanni could take another breath. Dante watched him slump to the floor, a red stain spreading across his chest. "You forgot something, old friend." Dante crouched beside Giovanni's body. His voice, ice, cold. "I'm still the monster they made me." He stood, stepping over the body as he pulled out his phone. "Clean this up," he ordered, "and get me everything we have on the Rosses. They want a war? I'll give them hell." But as he turned to leave, his hand brushed against the family photo in his pocket. Amara and their sons, taken just days ago. For the first time in years, Dante Moretti felt fear. Amara's head throbbed as consciousness crept back. The first thing she noticed was the biting cold of metal against her wrists, followed by the suffocating darkness. Her heart hammered against her ribs as reality crashed over her. The children were gone. "Hello?" Her voice cracked in the darkness. "Where are my sons?" Footsteps approached, and a door creaked open. Light spilled into what she now saw was a barren, concrete room. A man she didn't recognize stood in the doorway, his silhouette menacing. "Your boys are safe," he said, his Italian accent thick. "For now." Amara pulled against her restraints, metal biting into her flesh. "If you hurt them, that depends entirely on Moretti." The man cut her off, and how much his new family really means to him. Fear clawed at her throat, but she forced it down. She wouldn't show weakness, not to these men. "He'll kill you all," she whispered, and she meant it. Back at the mansion, Dante stood in Amara's empty bedroom, his knuckles white as he gripped the doorframe. The security footage showed everything. Giovanni's men drugging her tea, carrying her out through the service entrance, taking the boys separately. All while he'd been handling business across town. "Find them," he snarled at his underboss. "I want every safe house, every warehouse, every fucking inch of Milan searched. Now." His phone buzzed, a video message. When he opened it, his blood turned to ice. Amara, bound and conscious now, staring defiantly at the camera. Behind her, a familiar wall he recognized from an old meatpacking facility. Dante's jaw clenched so hard his teeth creaked. He'd let his guard down, trusted the wrong people, and now they had taken everything that mattered. "Boss," his underboss started, "we should get every man we have." Dante cut him off, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm going to paint this city red until I find them. And then?" His eyes darkened. "I'm going to make them wish they'd never touched what's mine." He strode out of the room, already barking orders into his phone. Time was slipping away, and with every passing second, the knot of fury in his chest grew tighter. They'd taken his family, his sons, his Amara. He would show them exactly why the name Moretti struck terror into the hearts of men. In the concrete room, Amara closed her eyes and thought of her boys, praying they were truly safe. And for the first time since this all began, she found herself praying for Dante too, praying he would come for them, praying the monster everyone feared would save them all. The night air crackled with tension as Dante's men moved through Milan like shadows. Their orders were simple: find Amara and the children, and destroy anyone who stood in their way. Dante sat in his black SUV, his jaw clenched so tight it might shatter. The city lights blurred past as they sped toward the Rossetti compound. His hands were already stained with the blood of 3 men who'd tried to lie about Amara's location. "Boss," his driver murmured, "we're here." The Rossetti estate loomed ahead, its iron gates a weak barrier against what was coming. Dante checked his gun, the metal cold against his palm. "Break it down." 2 vehicles rammed the gates, and chaos erupted. Gunfire lit up the night. Dante moved through it all like a ghost, his gray eyes dead and focused. Bodies fell around him. Rossetti's men never stood a chance. Inside the mansion, he found Marco Rossetti in his study, trembling behind his mahogany desk. The old man tried to speak, but Dante silenced him with a raised hand. "You took what's mine." Dante's voice was ice. "My children, their mother." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Did you think I wouldn't come?" "Moretti, please, we can negotiate." "No." Dante's finger tightened on the trigger. "This isn't a negotiation. This is what happens when you touch my family." Marco's eyes widened. "You'll start a war." A cold smile curved Dante's lips. "The war started when you took them." He leveled the gun at Marco's head. "Now, I'm ending it." The shot echoed through the mansion. Dante turned to face the crowd of Rossetti men who'd gathered, their weapons lowered in shock. Blood pooled around their boss's body, a clear message written in crimson. "Tell everyone," Dante commanded, his voice carrying through the silence. "Tell them what happens when they hurt what's mine." He walked out, leaving destruction in his wake. But the hollow ache in his chest remained. Amara was still missing. And until she was back in his arms, safe with their children, the monster inside him would keep burning the world down. The abandoned warehouse loomed before Dante like a twisted monument to his failure. His men moved silently through the shadows, weapons ready, but he already knew. The hollow feeling in his gut told him they were too late. "Boss!" "His underboss," Marco whispered, gesturing to the wires running along the walls. "The place is rigged." Dante's jaw clenched. They'd moved her again, moved his children. The thought of Amara and their sons in enemy hands made his blood run cold with a fury he'd never known before. "Get the bomb squad in here," he ordered, his voice deadly calm. "Then find me everything you can about where they took them." An hour later, Dante stood in the middle of the rival family's headquarters, his expensive suit splattered with blood. Bodies littered the marble floor around him. Some were still breathing. Most weren't. "Where is she?" he demanded, pressing his foot against a wounded guard's throat. The man sputtered, eyes wide with terror. The old vineyard estate," the guard choked out. "Salvatore has them there." Dante didn't hesitate. The bullet found its mark between the guard's eyes. At the vineyard, Salvatore waited in the grand dining room, a cruel smile twisting his weathered face. Amara was forced to kneel beside his chair, her hands bound behind her back. The sight of her there, degraded and afraid, made Dante's trigger finger itch. "Your sons are quite remarkable, Moretti," Salvatore taunted, running a finger along Amara's cheek. She jerked away, her eyes finding Dante's across the room. "Such spirit, just like their mother." "Don't touch her!" Dante's voice was ice. Salvatore laughed, standing slowly. "If you want them back, Moretti, you'll have to kneel before me. Surrender your territory, your power, everything." Dante stepped forward, and something in his expression made even Salvatore take a step back. A dark smile curved Dante's lips, the kind that had earned him his reputation as a monster. "I don't kneel for anyone," he said softly. "And you just made your last mistake." The room erupted in chaos as Dante's men burst through every entrance. But Dante only had eyes for Salvatore, who was now backing away, finally understanding what true fear felt like. This wasn't just about power anymore. This was about family, and Dante Moretti protected what was his. Dante moved through the shadows of the rival family's compound like death incarnate, his expensive suit spattered with blood. Behind him, his men cleared room after room with brutal efficiency. The air was thick with gunpowder and screams. But he heard none of it. His world had narrowed to a single purpose: finding Amara and their children. A guard appeared at the end of the corridor. Dante didn't hesitate. His silenced pistol coughed twice, and the man crumpled. Stepping over the body, Dante pressed forward, his storm-gray eyes scanning every doorway, every corner. "Boss," his underboss whispered urgently. "Second floor is clear. They're keeping someone in the east wing." Dante's jaw clenched. He'd already killed 12 men tonight, but it wasn't enough. It wouldn't be enough until Amara was back in his arms. They found resistance at the top of the stairs, 4 armed men who clearly expected them. The firefight was brief, but savage. Dante took a graze to his shoulder, but he barely felt it. The rage burning in his chest consumed everything else. When the last man fell, Dante grabbed him by the throat. "Where are they?" The dying man coughed blood, but managed a defiant smile. "Go to hell, Moretti." Dante's expression didn't change as he pulled the trigger. "You first." They found her in a windowless room at the end of the hall. The lock gave way under Dante's boot, and there she was, his Amara, battered but unbowed, her dark eyes wide with disbelief and relief. "Dante," she whispered, her voice rough from screaming. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. She was trembling, but her fingers clutched at his bloody suit jacket like she'd never let go. The scent of her jasmine and fear and home made his chest ache. "You're safe now," he growled against her hair, one hand cradling her head while the other kept his weapon ready. "You're mine, forever." Gunfire echoed through the compound, but Dante held her tighter, his heart thundering against his ribs. He'd burn every rival family to the ground, kill every person who dared to touch her. But right now, with Amara finally back in his arms, he allowed himself one moment of pure relief. She was his again, and this time nothing would take her away. Blood dripped from Dante's hands as he stood among the carnage. Bodies littered the warehouse floor, the men who had dared to touch his family. The rival patriarch lay at his feet, eyes still open in death, a testament to what happened when someone threatened what belonged to Dante Moretti. But Dante wasn't looking at the destruction he'd caused. His storm-gray eyes were fixed on Amara, who stood trembling against the wall. Their 4 boys clung to her legs, faces buried in her clothes. The sight of them alive, safe, made his chest tighten. "It's over," he said, his voice rough. He took a step toward them, and Amara flinched. Not from him, never from him anymore, but from the violence that surrounded them. One of the boys peeked out, his little face so much like Dante's own. "Papa?" The word hit Dante like a bullet to the chest. He dropped to his knees, not caring about the blood that soaked his expensive suit. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm here." Amara's eyes filled with tears as she watched their sons slowly detach from her legs and move toward their father. The same man who had just killed without mercy now opened his arms with infinite gentleness. "I promised you," Dante said, looking up at Amara as the boys reached him. "I promised no one would hurt you." She nodded, her voice shaky. "You did." Dante pulled her down to him, careful not to get blood on her face as he cupped her cheek. "I told you, Amara, no one takes you from me. No one. You and the boys are everything to me." His lips brushed her ear. His words meant only for her. "You're mine, always." Amara trembled in his arms, but this time not from fear. She nodded, finally understanding that his darkness would always protect them, never harm them. Their future was uncertain. But they were together, a family forged in both violence and love. Dante held them all close, his deadly hands now gentle as they touched his children's faces. The monster of Milan might rule with blood and fear, but here, with them, he was simply a man protecting what he loved most in the world. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's floor to ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Dante sat at the head of the expansive dining table, his posture relaxed but commanding. His eyes, usually hard and calculating, softened as he watched Amara help their youngest son cut his pancakes. The quadruplets had settled into life at the mansion, their laughter now echoing through halls that had once known only silence and fear. Marco, the most outgoing of the four, was telling an animated story about his new toys, his small hands gesturing wildly. Alessandro, always the quiet one, methodically arranged his fruit into precise patterns. Luca and Giovanni competed to see who could finish their breakfast first, earning a gentle reprimand from their mother. Dante's chest tightened with an unfamiliar warmth. This was his family. Not the cold, violent world he'd inherited, but something pure and precious he'd fought to protect. "Daddy," Marco called out, the word still new and wonderful on his tongue. "Can we play in the garden later?" Dante's breath caught. A month ago, they'd called him Sir with fearful eyes. Now, they reached for him with trust and love. He nodded, his voice rough with emotion. "Of course, Piccolo." Amara glanced up, meeting his gaze. The wariness that had once shadowed her eyes had been replaced by something deeper, more permanent. She wore his ring now, a black diamond that matched the necklace he'd given her all those weeks ago. It wasn't just jewelry anymore. It was a promise. After breakfast, Dante stood in his office, overlooking the estate grounds. His empire had changed. The whispers in the criminal underworld spoke of how the monster of Milan had become even more dangerous, not weakened by love, but strengthened by it. Anyone who dared threaten his family learned quickly that Dante's mercy had limits. Amara found him there, closing the heavy door behind her. She moved to stand beside him, her presence both calming and electrifying. "Sometimes," she said softly, "I still can't believe how much has changed." Dante turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "You changed everything, Amor. You gave me something worth living for, worth changing for." She leaned into his touch, no longer flinching from the hands that had dealt so much death. "And you showed me that sometimes the safest place can be in the arms of a dangerous man." He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her temple. "I'll never stop protecting what's mine. You, the boys, you're everything." The sound of children's laughter drifted up from the garden below. Their sons were playing under the watchful eyes of Dante's most trusted guards, free and safe in their own paradise. "We've built something here," Dante murmured, his arms sliding around Amara's waist as they watched their children. "Something stronger than any empire." Amara turned in his embrace, reaching up to trace the sharp line of his jaw. "Who would have thought? The maid and the monster." "Not a monster anymore," he corrected, his eyes intense. "Just a man who would burn the world for his queen." The kiss they shared was both tender and possessive, a perfect reflection of their love. As the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Dante and Amara stood together, watching their new world unfold. Their story wasn't perfect. There would always be dangers, always be threats to face, but they would face them together, the Mafia king and his queen, protecting their precious kingdom. In the end, love hadn't weakened Dante Moretti. It had made him invincible, and in his arms, Amara had found not just safety, but power. The power to love a dangerous man and make him gentle, to take a world of darkness and fill it with light. They were unstoppable now, unbreakable, forever. Amara stood by the window in Dante's office, her gaze sweeping over the sprawling estate that had become their haven. The morning sun cast a warm glow on the lush gardens where their children played freely, a sight she'd once feared would never be possible. Her reflection in the glass revealed a transformation as profound as the one that had swept through Dante's world. From the trembling maid who had lived in shadows to a woman who had claimed her place beside the most feared man in Milan. Only now, fear was no longer her companion. In its place was a strength born from survival, from love that defied logic and violence. Dante moved closer, his presence a steady anchor in the turbulent seas they'd navigated together. He watched her, with eyes that bore the weight of promises kept and battles won. The lines of his face were softer now, more human, less monster. "The boys," she said softly, gesturing towards the yard where Marco dashed between the rose bushes, with Giovanni hot on his heels. "They seem so happy." Dante nodded, his expression intent as he studied their sons. "Their laughter heals wounds I thought would never fade." The world outside might still see him as a king of shadows, but here, within these walls, he was a father, a guardian, whose fears had been tempered by the fierce love she'd inspired. Quietly, Amara resumed her watch. A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the scent of jasmine, mingling with the sound of childish giggles. The guards posted around the perimeter maintained an unobtrusive presence, a testament to the precarious balance between the safety they cherished and the danger they could never entirely escape. Marco's laughter rang out again, buoyant and free, a sound that reminded Amara how far they'd come. From uncertain beginnings and dangerous revelations to this, the promise of an unconditional future. Always together. Dante brushed his fingers against her wrist, a touch so simple, yet so laden with meanings unspoken. His eyes held hers as he said, "I meant what I said. This is our world now." She intertwined her fingers with his, drawing strength from the emotions thrumming beneath his steady surface. "And our world means something. To them. To us. To everyone who thinks they can take it away." His smile was both fierce and tender, the contradictions of man and myth embodied in that simple gesture. "Let them try," he said, his voice a promise. "I've learned from the best how to protect what truly matters. Learned that sometimes the most lethal aren't those who cast shadows, but those who shine." The boys' game took a new turn, this time with Alessandro absorbing each lesson from his brothers with characteristic determination. None faltered under Dante's watchful eye, each strength a reflection of their legacy. Their footsteps grew fainter as they disappeared into the maze of the garden. Amara's grip on Dante's hand tightened, her own certainty bubbling to the surface. "I think sometimes," she confessed, "I underestimated the value of softness, the choices we've made to bring it here." He chuckled softly, his thumb grazing her knuckles. "And maybe I underestimated what one night could become. The strength of those choices." Amara met his gaze, raw and unwavering. "It's why we survive. This love, this softness, it's what will always keep us solid." With that, Dante turned her to face him fully. His other hand settled against the small of her back, drawing her flush against him, a silent vow to stand beside forever. Everything they had, every moment they'd seized from the chaos, it was reflected back from the garden where sunlight warmed their children's skins, where joy thrived against odds until now considered insurmountable. Together they stared outwards, accompanied by hopes born from darkness, where their lives, woven into perilous threads, found completion wrapped in each other's presence. As rulers of a kingdom carved from blood and protection, they'd built an empire driven by quiet promises and unyielding resolve. For that future, whatever awaited outside these gates, whatever new challenges dared breach their serenity, Dante and Amara were ready. And in the silence, with hearts steady and futures uncompromised, they knew such resolve was enough to conquer anything that might come. Amara took a deep breath, letting it out in a slow, steady exhale as she watched their sons dash around the garden. Their laughter rang through the air, a melody that hung lightly, almost dreamlike, beneath the setting Sunday she felt the warmth of Dante beside her and stole a sideways glance at him. His face, often set like stone, softened as he observed their children at play. "Never thought I'd find this, you know." He murmured more to himself than to her, but she heard him. "It's not exactly what I expected either," she admitted, her voice as gentle as the breeze rustling through the leaves. He turned to her, traces of his ruthless exterior melting away in the golden hour light. "Amara, when I found you when I saw them for the first time, I thought I'd go mad. You terrified me," Amara said, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking louder would scare away the fragile peace they held. He nodded, knowing the blame lay heavy on his shoulders. "I know, but I couldn't let any of you just slip away again." His eyes softened with a vulnerability she had seldom seen. "Now I fear for the world. Not us," he said, the hint of a grin teasing his lips, "because I'd tear it apart for you." Amara smiled, her heart beating wildly in her chest, fueled by a fluttering mixture of anticipation and burgeoning love. It had taken losing nearly everything for Dante to face what really mattered. Yet, here they were together, stronger for the trials they had endured, and though their world still throbbed with danger, it was also filled with a tenderness she had believed impossible between them. "The boys," she paused, searching his eyes. "They see you now, not just the Moretti name, but the father beneath it. You've changed, Dante." His expression turned serious. "They deserve better than what I was raised in," he replied, his grip on her hand firm and resolute, "and I intend to give it to them." As dusk slowly embraced the mansion, servants moved about quietly, setting the evening's scene with the soft glow of candlelight and the gentle rustle of fine linens on dinner tables. Life continued in all its normalcy, a deceptive calm cloaked in luxury and shadows. Amara considered the journey they both had walked, costly in ways she could never have imagined, but undeniably worth every fleeting moment of peace and love it had yielded. Dante, always reading her thoughts with uncanny insight, spoke up again, his voice a calming rumble. "Everything that's happened, sometimes I wonder how we made it through." "We had to," she replied, eyes glancing toward their family playing in the fading light. "For them, and for us." He slid an arm around her waist. "My father would have told me a man's empire is solely his own, that it lives and dies with his strength alone." He shook his head with quiet defiance. "But this empire, our empire, it's built on us, and on trust," she added cautiously. The weight of betrayal still lingered between them, a specter nearly as powerful as love itself. "Yes," Dante agreed, pulling her even closer. "Trust, forged through fire." The evening air took on a cooler edge, brushing against their skin like a promise. Together they watched as their sons, exhausted from their endless games, trudged back to them. The boys tumbled indoors, a chaotic whirlwind of vitality and innocence. Amara turned to follow them, but Dante's hand caught hers, halting her movement, tethering her with more than just a touch. "We're going to be all right, Amara, I know it." "And if they come for us again?" Her voice wavered at the question whose answer lay beneath the surface of their unwavering unity. Dante released her hand, only to encircle her in an embrace as steady and profound as his words. "Then they'll find there's nothing more dangerous than a man defending his heart, his blood." Surrendering to warmth and determination, Amara rested her cheek against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm that matched her own. "I trust you," she whispered, the words tangling in the air between breaths, solidifying the new world they had constructed amidst chaos. The mansion, once a symbol of power and isolation, now echoed with life. Children's laughter, intertwined with soft conversations and the distant hum of vigilant security. Dante surveyed his dominion, allowing himself to feel contentment in the fleeting tranquility. "You're my strength, Amara. Always have been," he murmured into her hair, brushing a tender kiss where shadows met her brow. They stood together under the watchful stars, sheltering dreams rekindled from fearsome ashes. Later that evening, as the house lulled into the stillness brought on by twilight and exhaustion-edged silence, Amara stood before her dresser, the necklace Dante had gifted her lying like an elegant etching against the polished wood. Memories flickered like pages of an unwritten book, a maid standing in a quiet mansion, an unexpected reunion, walls that had seemed unyielding, and the whisper of love tested beyond limits. Behind her, the sound of the door opening brought her back to now a testament to promises she could not yet fully comprehend, a world they had not chosen but embraced regardless. Dante's reflection appeared beside hers in the mirror, his eyes meeting hers through the silvered glass. No longer those of a man haunted by shadows, but of one who had found his light. "Amara," he said softly, his voice a balm, curing whatever uncertainties trickled through time's present pause. "There's nothing we can't face, together." She turned, meeting his gaze head. On as resolve shimmered beneath her words. Together it is. The weight of their silent vow wrapped around them like a mantle. Forever lay ahead, unwritten but patiently waiting. As Dante leaned down to capture her lips, the world outside seemed distant, the calm they had manufactured through shared peril and grasped hope extending like an infinite sky. The darkness that had long defined them shifted, retreating, allowing room for something purer, something that could outlast shadows. Their lips met in a promise born from adversity yet tempered by love, a kiss that spoke of life reclaimed, strength found in togetherness, a guarantee that whatever came next, they would face it unwavering, undaunted, united not only as lovers, but as the indomitable heart of an empire forged in passion and tempered by fire. Above all, guided by love, unseen, unprecedented, but finally understood. The sprawling mansion was quiet as dusk deepened its grip on the world outside. Inside, Amara stood by one of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, her thoughts adrift as she watched the sun slip below the horizon. The grounds were a vibrant tapestry of life, a testament to resilience and growth in face of chaos, a comforting reminder of the world they had reclaimed. She didn't hear Dante's approach until he was beside her, his presence a familiar force that radiated warmth. His hand brushed hers, tethering her to the moment, grounding her amidst the night's darkening embrace. "Tomorrow's another step forward." Dante spoke, his voice carrying a quiet resolve. "The alliance isn't quite what my father envisioned, definitely not through marriage, but it's solid. The rivals won't dare challenge us now." Amara nodded, eyes transfixed on the shadows falling across the far end of the estate. "We're safe," she agreed, the word hanging in the air like a fragile promise. "For now." Dante tightened his grip on her hand. "I'll make sure it stays that way." Turning her gaze to him, Amara searched his face for any remnants of past torments. The ghosts once tormenting Dante had brought fury and ruthlessness. But now, there was a spark of something pure, something untangled from bloodshed. How? Her question was simple but carried enough weight to challenge the new world they had created together. "By never letting my guard down," he replied. and making use of these alliances. She nodded, understanding the delicate balance upon which their peace rested, a world forged through hard-fought battles, sacrifices, and undeniable love. Together, they stood in silence, each enraptured by their own thoughts, plans silently spinning like the ceaseless turns of time. The mansion's walls, once a fortress safeguarding Dante's empire, now felt alive, thrumming with the blend of hope and latent danger. Outside, the gardens flourished, vibrant and untamed, as if reflecting their own unyielding spirits. Amara's thoughts drifted to her sons, their laughter filling the corridors, threads of innocence amid the tangled webs of power. "They're adapting faster than I expected," Dante spoke. She heard the pride in his voice, a profound, quiet joy wrapped in cautious layers. "They're smart boys, Amara. They uprooted everything." Amara mused, surprised at how quickly her sons had learned to accept their new reality. And still, they found a place in this world. "They did because they feel safe," Dante replied. His voice, a gentle rumble, weighted with assurance. Amara's breath caught for a fleeting moment. Safety was elusive, something she'd long believed unattainable, even as the promise of it lay before her now. "I think they're happy," she murmured, more to herself than to Dante, before turning her head to regard him fully. "And you?" Dante asked, probing the depths of those unspoken fears that lingered in the shadows. A lingering tension, knowing the darkness hadn't fully receded. She hesitated, the vulnerability teeming beneath her surface, nearly colliding with an undying sense of caution. After a beat, she nodded. "I chose this, Dante. We chose it. And together we'll protect it," he assured her, offering unwavering certainty. His words, fierce and possessive, held an undeniable promise, but softened with compassion, a testament to the man transformed by love itself. As their gaze held, Dante's expression softened beneath the weight of their shared promise. The world around them lulled in the seductive pull of night, an intricate tapestry of dreams woven from determination and trust. Amara stepped closer, drawn by the gravity they'd cultivated, the magnetic pull of an undeniable shared destiny. Her fingers grazed his cheek, tracing the contour of strength and conviction. Dante's eyes, shadowed by promises unyielding, met hers glinting, forever entwined. For a moment, everything else faded away, with only the rhythm of their hearts to remind them of the world beyond and the fortress they'd forged from the remnants of chaos. Beyond the window, the last vestiges of sunset dipped into concealed depths, leaving room for starlight to dot the canvas of night, a promise written in silver and darkness. "Whatever comes, we face it together," Dante vowed, the words a firm embrace reinforcing their newfound reality. Their silence spoke volumes. A shared song, a vow unspoken but well understood. Together, they turned from the window, leaving behind shadows of what had been, stepping forward into the promise of all that awaited them, a future crafted in the dance between danger and love. The next morning found the estate bubbling to life, a symphony of familial chaos echoing through its corridors. Amara moved easily through the mansion, her thoughts tethered to comforting normalcy as she checked in on her sons, their breakfasts interspersed with whispered secrets and laughter. She ventured down the hallway to Dante's study, knowing he'd be there commanding their world with an unyielding grip. His back was to her when she entered, papers spread across the desk, the room suffused with the fragrance of fresh coffee and leather, a tangible reminder of the man who had shaped not only the perception of power, but their shared life. "Your morning meeting with Riga went well." Amara broke the silence, her voice gentle as she leaned against the doorframe. Dante turned his chair, offering her a swift, intimate smile, his face alight with a combination of triumph tempered by cautious optimism. "Our peace continues to expand," he announced, rising to greet her. "And so does our influence, which also means more eyes watching us," Amara noted, understanding the complexities of Dante's world far better than he once imagined. "Protection," Dante corrected, confident yet cautiously resonant, a balancing act often teetering between vigilance and danger. Amara nodded, acknowledging the facets woven into their existence, always ready, always poised. Across the space between them, unyielding love anchored them further, tethering each to the other like an unbreakable chain. "It'll pass," she said, closing the distance between them. "This anxiety, a consequence of navigating your world." Dante faced her fully, a gentle rumble escaping like thunder caught beneath silky light. "Not just my world, our world." His assertion seemed to twine effortlessly within the expanse between them. The weight of their shared journey settled around his shoulders like a cloak bound by life, love, danger, unity. As their gaze held, Amara leaned in, allowing herself a moment to revel beneath the encompassing presence, finding solace in the strength he offered. "Come on," Dante whispered, leading her out of the study, hand firmly holding hers. "We'll walk together." Leaving the study behind, they ventured through towering corridors, dim walls rising around them like unspoken oaths, weaving new threads into their lives adorned with promise and anticipation. The world outside their realm sang with vibrant light, a reflection of their own triumph over adversity. The gardens lay sprawling before them, as vivid and untamed as the echoes of their journey, alive with the promise of all that awaited. Together they walked through the gardens, a path untrodden yet boundlessly familiar, following unspoken vows beneath the embrace of the skies that stretched beyond the gentle hills surrounding their home. And yet, despite all they'd faced and conquered, there was a lightness in each step, a palpable sense of rediscovered purpose and untangled happiness that unfurled around them like lifted fog. The mansion they returned to, echoing with hidden magic, no longer felt like a fortress, but a home. Visiting each garden bed, each corridor of their home, it was clear what they had built wasn't just power, but companionship, a future, tangible and rich, endlessly unfolding. Nothing remained insurmountable, and everything was possible. In perfect symmetry, they walked hand in hand, solid proof that they owned this world, their world, and amid the tangled throes of destiny, they had found their place. It was midday when Dante received an urgent phone call. He stood by the desk in his study, tension suddenly threading through the atmosphere, a flicker against the mantle of calm. Amara entered, drawn by the quiet gravity. Dante exuded silent authority, tracing the room's dimensions as he spoke. He set the receiver down, eyes meeting hers, revealing layers of himself unobscured by power or dominance. "The rivals have requested a meeting," Dante revealed, voice measured. "Terms of the alliance finalized." Amara nodded, grasping the weight of this pivotal moment, not as an end, but as a beginning written in whispers among shadows. "This is the end of conflict," Dante affirmed, a promise, a declaration, a vow. Amara placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, a grounding, intimate gesture. "They've realized what we stand for now. It's a game of respect," Dante replied, the deep resonance of his voice carrying beneath the surface, a sound entwined with trust, power, heart, every element they had fought for. "And you've taught me that, Amara. Respect we've earned." With newfound certainty, she met Dante's eyes, unafraid of the future, secure in the uncharted territory they would traverse. Together, nothing would remain unwritten. "Then let's make a history all our own," she murmured, a whispered vow, resonating in shared silence. As the mansion filled once more with continued peace and promise, they stepped forward, their lives forging new paths, an empire unmatched in strength and sovereignty. Everything they had built whispered beneath the surface, and gently promised all that lay ahead. Together, they would face whatever might come, whatever lay beyond. United, undaunted, forever. Dante paced the length of the study, shadows thicker with each anxious step. His phone, discarded with unexpected heaviness, lay forgotten on the desk, a silent witness to secrets shared within its lines. Amara watched him with intent, the sunlight filtering through grand windows, casting fragmented patterns upon his taut expression. "Do you trust them?" Her words, steady despite the undercurrents of their meaning, broke the quiet like an echo of their own fears. "Trust?" Dante snorted, the sound harsh in the echoing room, yet missing the usual chill of disdain. "It's never about trust. It's about knowing your enemy's weakness." Amara shifted slightly, tracking the tension woven through his form, seeing beyond layers the rest may never untangle. Unlike others, she felt the weight of every silent vow rendered beneath the echoes of unspoken promises. Years of understanding reflected back at him through her gaze. His defenses yielded at each word she spoke. Then why agree at all? Her inquiry mirrored certainty amidst turbulent waters. Dante turned, a mixture of admiration and frustration swirling beneath turbulent eyes, the endless storm that Amara now knew intimately. A united front ends bloodshed, not trust. His voice echoed with unfaltering strength, iron and silk entwined. But even amidst negotiations, have no illusions. All dealings with them are fragmented lies. Amara nodded, unspoken knowledge cleaving between them. She rose, crossing to him with deliberate care, reserved for the rare occasions when his vulnerability crept toward daylight. Her hands gentle against the tension, amassed at his shoulders, a familiar solace. "They wish to learn the depth of our unity," Dante continued, voice low against the silence. "We'll attend the meeting, and they'll see our strength together." Amara's closeness felt like tethered light within his darkness, unwavering as it filled the void inherent within all forms of resolution. She understood the intricate weave of lives cradled beneath the expanse of his grip, the intricate balance from which they drew strength. "They'll never find a fracture," she affirmed softly. Words, etched into the air, solidified in the tension before their shared smile slanted amid the growing certainty of resolution. "They'll see what we've built," Dante agreed, trust encapsulated within the depths of his murmuring grace. Though rarely spoken, it resonated as foundation within the present past, fears parsed amid moments unshared. Their fingers intertwined, a reminder of strength born from struggle, of possessive need forged amidst chaos. Each touch whispering like woven threads, connecting everything they were. The meeting loomed large within the landscape of anticipation, each passing hour bringing heightened tension amid preparations. Dante's mansion stirred with the promise of unity amidst veiled negotiations. Meticulous care colored every move, threading silent authority throughout each moment. Amara observed the deft movements of Dante's men as they followed orders, each motion echoing beneath quiet certainty, insistent like every stride toward destiny. She knew them by name now, faces etched in familiarity, exchanged nods, speaking volumes aloud. "Are they ready?" Dante's voice cut through the shared movements like a blade slicing daylight, impatience evident despite the irony of how time felt suspended. "Always prepared, Dante," Giovanni, the trusted lieutenant, answered. Confidence woven into each word, a promise amid the landscape of deeds mapped out through simple truths minted in loyalty. Dante nodded, somber yet resilient as he turned, his gaze lingering on Amara. Purpose threaded through every glance. entwined with precious fragments of remaining stillness, shared in the moments before silence fell once more. Amara crossed the room to join him, a rhythmic cadence accompanying each step, their connection woven deep amidst the veins of every promise. Layered and remarkably strong, despite the odds tracing every breath. "Let's go," Dante announced, turning toward the door. Amara followed, the world shifting to accommodate their passage, the mansion hovering in spatial memory, solid and unchanged, filled with unmoving truths beneath whispered breaths and ambitions. Shadows within the empire faltered not even as their lives expanded beyond it. Together, they moved toward the convoy's steel, casting patterned hues on the landscape in quiet loyalty. The journey unfurled like a measured symphony of anticipation, each note rendered silently resonant. Silver notes of the moonlight painted the rendezvous like scattered harmony, a haunting melody over concrete and glass-shaped to reflect shadows as the vehicles arrived. The night carried its own enigmatic heat beyond whispered preparation, singing beneath thin veils separating action from resolution. Dante, stepping from the car like a sculpted titan, felt the weight of their purpose cresting toward the horizon. Amara close beside him, her presence, an anchor amidst the shifting tides. They were united, a formidable force within the darkness cast beneath the strength of their shared resolve. The opposite party arrived, figures emerging amid the intoxicating rhythm, drawn from careful precision. They asked for resolutions, forged from delicate promises, feathered notions spun within, veiled truths, illusory beneath their gaze, meaning threaded, each movement like shaded silk asseverating filigree promises in nothings. Amara's steady gaze mirrored Dante's, a shared vow unbreakable beneath the contemplation of darkness. Together their approach was deliberate, a measured dance, a relationship calculated to withstand the breadth of decline within fragmented agreements. Across the space between them, the rival boss acknowledged their arrival, possessed dark urgency in its movements. It transcended the tangible points of the gathering. "Moretti," the figure acknowledged. Its voice enveloped in tentative promise, a whispered echo amidst the shadows contrasting strained light. Dante refrained from reply, words unnecessary amid path-touched destinies. His reply was carried within spectacle, woven in silences, edges honed by determination. Amara joined him, unwavering as reflected strength-shaped encounters with silent determination. Their negotiations continued, a rhythm unique to the space, relationships woven from veiled desires and fractured truths occupying whispered breaths among commandant exchanges. "I don't need words of trust," Dante intoned, cutting through tension with resolve, a measured symphony. "We in our claim know authenticity, forged beneath guarded loyalties and burdens shared." Silent comprehension enveloped the circle, both parties, fed by familial certainty, conflict's tendrils severed underneath promise's fortitude. Amara stood beside Dante, unwavering truth embodied beneath tension-given voice. She saw knowledge meld into decisions like painted shadows within glass, casting echoes across horizons. Without spoken question, unity, wedged between conflict's throes, traced strength into the realm of unspoken resolution, a bridge built within fragile moments, wending together opposing realities. As they departed, words unspoken, yet heavy, Amara and Dante shared quiet contemplation, a gradual descent through perceptions shaded in reflection. Tomorrow claimed unseen promises, woven into moments spent across mingled destinies. Upon returning to the mansion, darkness gave way beneath sunrise, a shift of light, revealing its property among spaces woven from creation's longing. Dante found solace tinged with determination, a promise, a resolution painted like dyed silk. Together, he and Amara faced the remnants of the previous night, unhurried, A quiet journey marked by strength unconquerable. New beginnings awaited, sculpted from moments spent beneath time's watchful gaze. Dante nodded as understanding, settled a gentle smile before shared vows carved out spaces amid perfect reflections born beneath love's constancy. Amara stepped to his side, her presence enveloping him, a shared vow unchallenged by darkness, now falling into measured anticipation. Power followed in quiet tones, committing futures to sunlit paths. Pact stakes. Dante murmured a memory cast along fragile tokens enjoyed within destiny's realm. Yes. Amara whispered a breath amid captured echoes that defined certainty woven through perpetual canvas. Phrase a beacon, silence, a sanctuary motion sharing new beginnings. Amara woke with the sun streaming through the window, casting warm, golden rays across the room. She lay in the large bed, its sheets and entangled comfort wrapping around her. It was a new day, one with the smell of hope and possibilities hanging in the air. Her sons, 4 vibrant forces of life, were still asleep, their room quiet but for the gentle sighs of their breaths. In the stillness, Amara thought about how much had changed. This world she now inhabited, once filled with fear and constant reminders of peril, had shifted. Although danger lurked beyond the mansion walls, within lay safety. Dante had promised as much, and though it once seemed implausible, she believed it now. Her boys were thriving in this gilded cage, living in safety, playing in sprawling gardens they once could have only dreamed of, visiting. Their laughter brought warmth to the corridors of a house that echoed with silent footfalls and the ghosts of Dante's past. She marveled at how seamlessly they had adapted, how their presence had softened the edges of the monstrosity she had feared. The sound of footsteps drew her gaze towards the door. Dante entered, his silhouette a study in contrasts. Power radiated from him, cloaked in the luxurious cut of a tailored suit, yet there was warmth in his eyes, a softness that Amara had come to recognize. It was the look he reserved only for her and the boys, a reminder that beneath the commanding exterior was a man profoundly bound to them. "Morning," Dante said, his voice low, resonant with familiarity. He stepped to her side, his hand a gentle force resting on her shoulder. It was both reassuring and affirming, this touch, the silent promise of unity between them. "Morning," Amara replied, her tone colored with the comfort she discovered in the midst of luxury and danger. There was still uncertainty, but it was tinged with expectation now, a sense of where they had come from, where they were headed. "Have you eaten?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly, concern coloring his tone. She shook her head. "Just got up," she admitted, the world hesitating before the day's rhythm captured them in its mesh. "Do you want me to join you?" Dante's words were more a statement than a question, his presence unwavering in a commitment forged within momentous encounters. Amara nodded, a quiet smile pulling at the corners of her lips. "I'd like that." The dining room was awash in morning light, the table laid with delicate pastries and fresh fruits, an array of breakfast choices that still left Amara in awe. Dante embraced the mundane ritual, the clink of cutlery, the gentle laughter of the boys, creating a symphony, a melody woven thread by thread into the fabric of their lives. Dante watched her as he poured coffee into a porcelain cup, his gaze intense, saturated with the kind of focus the world knew him for. A silent affirmation that this breakfast, this stolen serenity, were moments worth claiming, a luxury for both world-weary souls. "A meeting soon," Dante murmured as the boys played beneath their feet. Their breakfast, a forgotten bounty in the thrill of proximity. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of leadership, the burden of the empire he navigated. Peace hung on the edge of fragility, the delicate balance born from the remnants of a world still perilous outside. Yet here, in the refuge they had built together, Amara found solace in these brief exchanges, a reminder that outside tensions couldn't permeate the fortress they had woven around each other. Amara nodded, understanding. Dante's world was one of constant motion, orchestrated under a sky of inevitable responsibilities. Her trust in him had grown layer by layer, a slow unveiling beneath the shadows that stretched beyond their world. A pact formed out of necessity, strengthened by shared threats endured. "Thank you," Amara said, her gratitude rooted in the weight of their bond. A resolute understanding matured into an unyielding foundation. She found herself marveling at how effortlessly this union had claimed them, melding them within sweetness and steel, a dance of protection, of grace. Dante nodded, a slight curve in his expression, a smile that was a rare gift, one Amara cherished each time it emerged. Breaking through the armor, the mansion was quiet the rest of the morning. The boys tumbling through the corridors in their adventures, each turn transforming them into explorers of newfound worlds, limited only by their imaginations. Amara watched them, her heart full, knowing these halls had become their kingdom, a sanctuary where their safety was Dante's sworn priority. Later, she wandered the gardens, a riot of colors weaving beneath the flirtatious nip of the breeze. The space reminded her of subdued grace, the feeling that accompanied them where danger failed to reach. Her thoughts returned to Dante, his world of power and shadow, a domain she had likewise adapted to, even if reluctantly at first. She felt the weight of their choices, the creaseless pathways dictated by actions past, present, and future. And yet, she found herself content, aware that this life and its complexities had given her something that no other world could. As evening fell, Dante returned. His presence, an omnipresent force, an assurance, whispered in the silent promise their paths had established. Together, they navigated their surroundings, this life built by circumstance yet reinforced by conviction. Dinner was another ritual, shadow threading beneath the cadence of everyday words, its presence entwined between the fabric of familial threads binding them together. The boys sat astride the adventurous stories Dante spun, a tale constructed by the play of imagination, escapades of animated heroes across grand landscapes conjured from whimsical dreams. Amara smiled at Dante's enrapturing performance, a revelation and wonder. Despite the darkness bordering their world, the stars they reached for were familiar ones, a bond born from necessity and tenaciously flourished. "This is our world now," Dante mused quietly. His voice, a steady guide through the turbulent eddies trailing threats beyond these walls. Amara nodded, her gaze absorbing his. "Yes," she replied, the word holding potent promises that conveyed more than their measure. They sat there, wrapped in serenity, the last light of dusk, a calm reminder. Entangled worlds lay beyond those still waters, yet within these moments existed the sanctuary they had built, bridging them from peril to peace. At night, as their territories closed in around them, a pulse brimming within, as lovers, allies, and partners, Amara and Dante wound their fingers together, clutching the threads of kinship they now shared. The future awaited them, an expanse stretching far from their past, hidden beneath shadows, woven into the elements of strength. They lent one another in these simple, powerful truths. Together, they faced the imposing sunset, its realignment of light, a symbol of rebirth, an era entrenched within. As darkness transcended the palette, their journey continued anew. Then they slipped into quiet, knowing that whatever awaited them ahead merely redirected the trajectory they had lived in pursuit. Here they stood, a force within a circle where shadows dared not encroach. As the night deepened, The air in the Moretti mansion settled into a gentle, comfortable silence. The world outside was still in turmoil, but within these walls, a newfound sense of unity and love flourished. Dante and Amara had navigated an ocean of chaos and emerged triumphant on its distant shores, their bond forged in fire and sealed in blood. "Do you remember our first night here?" Dante's voice was a low whisper in her ear, reminiscent of a secret shared between them and the shadows that danced on the walls. I was too wrapped up in my own plans to see what I'd found. Amara turned, searching his face. She outlined the fading cut on his cheek, a reminder of their shared turmoil and his relentless pursuit. "I thought you were a monster then," she admitted, her voice barely above a breath. "But I didn't see the man behind the monster." Her eyes glistened with the weight of everything unspoken. "And now?" He took her hand, tracing circles with his thumb, a soft motion belying the brutal strength that had saved them. "Now, I see you," she answered, her voice a gentle full stop to a sentence that needed no articulation. His grip tightened, his eyes burning with a fire that spoke more than words. In the thrum of their formed quiet, there was a blossoming warmth, a singular truth bridging past fragmented decisions toward a potent, irrevocable future. Days yawned. Into weeks, the sprawling mansion transforming from fortress to home. Dante, now both feared and admired, strode through the corridors, tempering his power with the decisive hand of a man redefined by love. Amara stepped into her new role seamlessly, her strength a reflection of everything they'd built together. From the outside, the world continued its whispers, the shadows of old rivalries fading like echoes in the wind. That evening, as they gathered for a family dinner under a canopy of stars, laughter filled the air, a sound more powerful than any vow he'd ever uttered. The boys passed stories between themselves, their bright eyes full of promise and potential. Amara stood beside Dante, their hands intertwined, a silent pledge witnessed only by the quiet depths of the universe above. "We did it," she murmured, leaning into him. Her heart, a steady, rhythmic beat in harmony with his. Dante watched the boys, their future no longer fraught with looming specters. "Yes," he agreed, his voice softening. "Together." Beneath the starlit firmament, sealed in the sanctity of a love that defied shadows, they embarked on the unwritten chapters of their shared legacy. United, unstoppable. If you enjoyed the story of Dante Moretti, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it. The end.